It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, calls for new restrictions on young drivers to save lives on the roads. A quarter of fatalities in car crashes here in the UK involve at least one young driver, with young men 4 times more likely to be killed or injured compared with other motorists. But campaigners say it doesn't have to be this way. We visited Canada, where such restrictions are in place, and deaths among young drivers there have fallen by more than 80%. Well, the restrictions form what is known as a graduated driving licence. I'll be speaking to bereaved parents who say that their children wouldn't have died if the UK had GDLs, and they're urging the government to change its position on them. Also ahead tonight, Prince Harry back in the UK and back in court. The Duke of Sussex was at the Court of Appeal in the latest round of his battle with the Home Office. Harry wants his family to receive the same level of security in the UK as they received before stepping down as working royals. While the Duke is in London, his father is in Rome. We'll have the latest on the King and Queen's state visits, with a trip to the Colosseum today and a flypast by the Red Arrows and their Italian counterparts. And there's a rat in the chamber. What are they going to do? A Birmingham resident makes a very visual point at a council meeting this afternoon, but the city's bin strikes continue and the rubbish continues to pile up. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Almost 5,000 people are killed or seriously injured every year in the UK as a result of collisions that involve young drivers. That's a shockingly high figure. But despite that number, the government says it is not considering new restrictions on young drivers. In other countries, tough rules on new drivers are the norm. They're called graduated driving licences, or GDLs. And they include restrictions like a minimum learning period, a ban on nighttime driving, or a limit on passengers. I've been speaking to parents who believe that their children would still be alive if the UK had GDLs. Before that, Sky's Dan Whitehead has been to Toronto in Canada, where GDLs are credited with cutting young driver deaths by more than 80%. This is Dan's special report.
Is it irresponsible to allow the same thing to happen over and over again and expect a different result without any interference?
Is it irresponsible?
Or is it insane?
They're credited with saving thousands of lives, mainly young, mainly male, new drivers.
You drive past these memorials on the side of the road and you just think, God, what an awful tragedy, but you never think it's going to be you.
So why is the UK government refusing to consider graduated driving licences?
Come out to some of our fatals and find out why, there's 3,000 pounds of steel wrapped around this person, and yet there was never any standard applied to them.
From success in Canada to growing anger in the UK, are tougher licences the answer to cutting deaths on Britain's roads?
Since that moment, my life's been changed, and it was an incomprehensible feeling. And I just remember getting home and getting to the front door, and my mum was just on the floor crying, and it was just such an awful, awful thing to experience.
Mia's brother Elliot was just 17 when he was killed. The car he was in with friends crashed into a tree at 100 miles per hour in Oxfordshire. As the government works on a major new road safety plan, she simply can't understand why they're not considering graduated driving licences.
I think they're making a very irresponsible decision. How can you not think they're the most important thing right now in the road safety laws? Because, people keep dying. These stories, you keep seeing them on the news. Young person's been killed, or another young person's killed someone else because they're not experienced enough to drive.
Graduated driving licences, or GDLs as they're known, put restrictions on new drivers, and the impact is significant. Highway 401 in Toronto, Canada. It is one of the busiest roads in the world, and one that new drivers here are banned from. Ontario has led the way in North America in developing tough driving laws.
It takes nearly 2 years to get a full driving licence here. And in that time, there's no hitting the road between midnight and 5 in the morning, no driving with a car full of your mates. And all of those things have seen the number of deaths and injuries fall.
I have never driven a car and I don't know like how to even start a car.
This is Bapreet's first time behind the wheel.
Look way down, look way down. Yeah, a little bit of gas, a little bit of gas.
She's setting off on a learning journey that'll take at least 20 months, with freedoms being earned in stages.
In the UK, you can do a course in 1 week and then take your test.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
Not everything is about freedom. You have to consider others as well. It's not just you driving, right? So there's other people on the road who you have to make feel safe.
At any one time, young drivers of Canada have 10,000 students learning. Maria helped introduce graduated driving licences to Ontario in the early 90s.
It could be a passenger restriction, it could be a time of day restriction, it could be a blood alcohol or a drug concentration restriction. But, you know, basically the idea is not to take someone who is newly licensed and say, here, go forth into this crazy mad driving world and just let them, you know, do or die, right? Because more often it's the die.
In the last 5 years, the number of 16 to 19-year-olds who've died on the roads here has fallen by 83%.
The data speaks for itself here, right? I would say, look at what we've done. We've got some of the, we've got 16 to 18 lane freeways here in the province of Ontario. We want to prevent as many accidents as possible. So truly, I see it more as a way to ensure the safety of everyone.
It's not just Canada that has tougher licensing laws. Australia, New Zealand and other places use it as well. But one of the questions we had is how on earth do police enforce it if a new driver breaks the rules?
You have the full light package, you have the full siren package, you have radio communications to use as well. It's got a printer when you write tickets that prints right out the back with special paper that's put in there. So really, it's a mobile office.
Superintendent Matt Moyer leads Canada's largest road safety unit here in Toronto. He admits policing new, young drivers comes with its challenges.
You need an in. We can't just arbitrarily stop people because we think or we have suspicion of. We have to believe that an offense has been created. We have to be realistic and manage the expectations of the community. I don't have enough people to pull over everybody who looks like they're young and behind the driver's seat at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't have that.
But he's in no doubt that the system here works.
Focus on the benefits. Focus on the fact that it not just saves lives, holds people accountable, but it's an extension of the values that we want our young people to have. I understand that there's some people who might believe that it's an infringement upon their rights to actually introduce laws. These aren't laws, they're standards. And the more people that will accept that and abide by that, you've just made a major contribution to public safety in Britain.
What age group do we reckon are most likely to be involved in road traffic collisions?
Back in the UK and at Elliot's old college, pupils are being taught about road safety. They are keen to get the freedom of a driving licence, but have mixed feelings about restrictions.
Obviously, when it starts off, it's good, because start off, you might be a bit nervous and stuff, and your friends might make you do bad decisions, or you might have to impress your friends driving quicker to make yourself look good. But if you're by yourself, you know you're going to follow the rules.
I think it's a bad idea because that's just going to make people want to break the rules even more.
I think there's pros and cons. I think it should be experience restricted, not age restricted.
I do think that is a good idea, definitely, because it will prevent I'm sure it'll prevent a lot of accidents and, because there's no need to show off to anyone or anything.
The government says it is not considering GDLs. It believes they unfairly penalise young drivers. It's looking at other options to tackle the issue. It's an opinion that frustrates Mia.
Do you think if graduated driving licences had been in place, your brother might still be here?
Absolutely, he would, yes. It makes me feel really angry and really quite disappointed and let down by our government, because he would still be here and so would hundreds of other people's sons and daughters, and it's completely changed my whole life, and I see how hurt my parents are by it, and I just need it to stop.
Her loss and the fact that lives are being saved in places like Canada is why Mia and other campaigners are urging the government to change its mind. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Campaigners here in the UK point to the success of GDLs in places like Canada as they fight to have them introduced here. I've been speaking to Sharon Huddleston and Ian Greenwood, who both lost their daughters in collisions involving young drivers. We were joined by Will Cummin from the Safer Essex Roads Partnership, who set out the scale of this issue.
There are around 5,000 people killed or seriously injured each year in collisions involving young drivers. About half of those are the young drivers and their passengers. Young male drivers under the age of 25, 4 times more likely to be killed than all drivers over 25, and it's the second biggest cause of death among 15 to 19-year-olds, behind only self-harm. 1 in 5 people in that age group who die as a result of collisions on the road.
They're startling statistics. And behind statistics are the families of the young people affected. And Sharon and Ian, your 2 families amongst them, sadly. Sharon, perhaps you can tell me about Caitlin. She was just 18.
Yes, that's right. Caitlin was my youngest child of 3. She was just 18 years old, and on the evening of the 14th of July in 2017, she accepted a lift from her friend. Her friend had just passed a test 4 months previously, and the girls were going out for an evening meal in Cumbria. And Caitlin was picked up, and 15 minutes later, there was a fatal collision that had happened. And we've since found out that the newly qualified driver had entered a bend slightly too fast for her experience of driving, and lost control on entering a wet bend on a rural road. And sadly, the car with her trying to gain control spun onto the opposite carriageway directly in front of and into a van travelling in the opposite direction. And Caitlin took the full impact of the crash into the front passenger seat where she was sitting, and I've been told she died on impact. The driver died too. She was also 18, and the backseat passenger was severely injured, as was the van driver. So through that crash, there was 4 families that were devastated, 2 bereaved, and 2 with serious injuries. And then not long after that, I found out through BRAKE, the road safety charity, that a law called a graduated driving licence could have possibly saved my daughter's life. And so upon finding that out, I started researching about it a little bit more, and I found out then that I could also ask the coroner at the inquest to write a Preventing Future Deaths report, and he wrote to the Department for Transport recommending that this should be implemented nationwide.
Yeah, the coroner saying in that Preventing Future Deaths report that GDLs would likely have stopped the crash that killed Caitlin from happening. How does it make you feel to know that it was inexperience that killed your daughter? It wasn't, you know, when we talk about road collisions and fatalities, so often you immediately think of drink driving, using mobile phones behind the wheel, speeding. This was just inexperience, a young girl. He was doing nothing wrong, but had only been on the road for a matter of months.
Yeah, and that's what I want to highlight as well, because I do find that young drivers are kind of, it's always thought of, as you say, the first thoughts are, oh, well, they must have been doing something wrong. Yeah. And this isn't true in this case. It was pure inexperience. And that's what I want to highlight as well, that many of these crashes are inexperience.
Ian, your daughter, all the things that a graduated driving licence would address, happened in Alice's case as well. Perhaps you could tell us about it.
So Alice didn't quite get to her 13th birthday, so 6 weeks. She was involved in a crash. So she was the passenger with her sister and their mum coming back from Alton Towers. They'd had a great weekend, and 5 young lads and their passengers decided it'd be a good idea to have a race. So the 5 cars were coming in the opposite direction, and essentially the second car in the convoy, who were all speeding, they were all distracted. It was a rural road. It's almost like doing a bingo with all the risk factors for a graduated driving licensing. Other than alcohol, they were all present in that crash. And the second car missed the bend and hit the car that my family were in. The driver managed to kill himself and his passenger, but also, tragically, my daughter was killed.
Well, I'm so sorry for the loss of Alice and Caitlin. The government are not going for it, though, Sharon. It was debated by MPs in January. We've had this statement from the Department for Transport. Every death on our roads is a tragedy, and our thoughts remain with the families of everyone who has lost a loved one in this way. Whilst we are not considering graduated driving licences, we absolutely recognise that young people are disproportionately victims of tragic incidents on our roads, and we are exploring options to tackle the root causes of this without unfairly penalising young drivers. Now, I know it's the last bit of that last sentence, unfairly penalising young drivers, that you have an issue with. Sharon, perhaps you'd like to talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, with them saying they don't want to penalise young drivers, our children have been penalised from living their lives. And what we're wanting to do is, by GDL, we know it works in other countries, we know it reduces young deaths on the roads. We want this implementing to help save young lives, to give children, teenagers, a future. Our children's futures were taken from them by, as I said, not breaking any laws in the case of Caitlin and her friend. So what we would reply to that, to the government, is that all these children that are killed on the roads, these young teenagers, they're being penalised from living their lives. We shouldn't have to bury our children, and the response is, oh, sorry, it was inexperience. You know, we shouldn't accept that.
Well, what has the impact been in other countries? Because I know this is in the early stages in Northern Ireland, for example, but it's in Australia, the United States. What are the real-term effects of it?
The real-term effects where it has been implemented in those countries you mentioned, which are reasonably comparable to the UK, is between a 20 and 40% reduction in the number of collisions involving young drivers. That would likely translate to the UK, depending on which measures were implemented. And those criticisms around the measures can also be addressed with exemptions. All those countries have exemptions to the measures that are designed to give young drivers that experience, so that it doesn't impact on things like employment and caring duties.
You see this as a life-changing law, and I know that you wrote a letter last month on behalf of the siblings of those who've been affected by these fatalities, these life-changing incidents that can happen. What did that letter say? That was directed, well, that was sent to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
We got 68 siblings, of all of whom have lost a brother or a sister in a road collision. And what became fairly obvious, and for Sharon and myself and the others in Forget Me Not Families Uniting, who's the campaign group, we live this every day, so we understand firsthand exactly what that is like. But what became quite obvious talking to some of those young siblings was just how their lives had been completely devastated by the loss of a brother or a sister. And we thought, with the government not considering graduated driving licensing systems, we wanted to raise that voice. We wanted them to have a voice. So we wrote to the Prime Minister. We are waiting to hear what he has to say in response to not penalising young drivers. What about those 68 siblings who've lost a brother or a sister? And it was just another way of raising the issue of road death and road danger. And we just wanted a different voice. We don't feel we've been listened to. So we thought we'd try a different voice, and why not talk to the young people themselves?
For those parents watching tonight, this will be an eye-opener, because a lot of parents don't know that a graduated driving licence scheme is even an idea that's out there. What would you say to those parents tonight about supporting you in this campaign? Because you're not done yet. This has been discussed a number of times by MPs. January, just the latest of those. it will come up again because of families like yours that won't let this go. What would you say to those who want to support you on this and help you?
Well, the thing is that is one of the things that I do want to get out to parents, because I didn't know of the dangers that evening when Caitlin got in a car with a newly qualified driver on a rural road. And so I think that needs to be spoken about as well, is to let parents know of the dangers, to say to your children, no, you're not getting in that car because they've just passed their test. Or to say to your child, no, you're not putting your friends in the car because you've just passed your test. Because we know through research that with every extra same-age passenger, the crash risk increases. And that is what I need to get out to families, because I didn't know all that. And I didn't know about graduated driving licences before this happened to my daughter. I found out too late, and I don't want it to be too late for other families.
Sharon Huddleston and Ian Greenwood there, who both lost their daughters in road traffic collisions involving young drivers, and Will Cubbin from the Safer Essex Roads Partnership. My huge thanks to them all. We did get a response to our report this evening from the Department for Transport, which you heard there during our conversation. But we also today spoke to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. That happened this morning, and we asked him for his response. Let's take a listen.
I do understand why parents are campaigning for greater road safety. We know that young people are disproportionately involved in car accidents. You're more likely to have an accident if you're an inexperienced driver too. So I understand the call for action. But we are looking at a wider road safety strategy to improve the situation, to improve safety on our roads, to reduce injuries and fatalities. I think the idea of graduated driving licences would, I think, be a kind of an unfair penalty on young people.
So, the government and the families agree on the facts. They agree there is a need for action. But they don't agree on graduated driving licences. You heard it there from the Health Secretary. It would be an unfair penalty on young drivers. But it's really hard to argue with the parents and siblings directly affected by this. As Sharon said in our conversation, to them it's not penalising young people, it's protecting them. The only ones being punished here are the thousands of families whose loved ones are killed or injured on the roads every year. You really have to ask yourself the question, what's a year or two of restrictions compared to a lifetime of devastation and young lives lost? As we heard earlier in Dan Whitehead's report, in Canada they're focusing on the benefits of the system, not on any drawbacks, because the numbers speak for themselves. 5,000 killed or seriously injured on the roads every year. Over half that number, the young drivers themselves and their passengers. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. 2 teenagers are found guilty of killing 80-year-old Bim Coley. He was attacked in a park near Leicester last year. We'll bring you the details.
The only way to Gaza for us right now is with the Israeli military. The IDF had brought us in to show us a tunnel network under a residential neighbourhood.
The length of time it must have to have created these tunnels must have taken years.
At the end of the day, it's war at the top. It's war down here.
I'm Alistair Bungle, Sky's Middle East correspondent based here in Jerusalem. As we were filming, there was a gun battle in the next street.
This neighbourhood, the Israeli military say, was the stronghold of Hamas's Rafah brigade.
It was just after 6:30 a.m. when the first shots were fired.
I remember everything. It was a day that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget.
There's no moon, perfect conditions for smugglers and human traffickers trying to move fuel, weapons and people.
The valleys in between, they're some of the main smuggling routes.
After days of negotiation, a major smuggler here has agreed to meet us.
The families that we've spoken to of people who have died trying to cross into Europe, they say you're a murderer. Are you a murderer?
No.
Sky News, get the full story first. Begum was 15 when she left East London with 2 school friends to join Islamic State in Syria.
Do you feel that you have committed a crime to the extent that you should serve time in a British prison?
I mean, I feel like the only crime I committed was
coming here.
If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. I can take the heat. The second thing that Harry Truman said, was in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog.
My children will love a dog.
In Tel Aviv, a constant streak of interceptions filled the night sky as waves of missiles came in.
It appears to be a very, very large and sustained attack on Israel.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
A 15-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl have today been convicted of killing an elderly dog walker in a park near Leicester last year. 80-year-old Bim Coley was just yards away from his home in Braunston Town when the attack took place in September. A post-mortem examination showed that he had died from a neck injury and also had several fractured ribs. Neither the boy nor the girl can be named because of their ages. Detective Inspector Mark Sinsky from Leicestershire Police spoke just before the verdict.
This has been of national significance and certainly very impactful on the local community. As a rule, elderly people aren't attacked by children, but in this case, he was. And that shocked the community and the family to the core, and indeed the wider public at large. The investigation team have took no satisfaction in this inquiry. A man, a much-loved family man, a pillar of the community, has lost his life. His family are traumatised and devastated and lost all that they had in that very loved and respected man. And the community's lost a pillar of all that was best in that community. And by children. And that is what shocked everybody to the core.
Well, Amelia Harper is here and has been following this today. Amelia, it's worth reminding people what happened back in September because, just hearing some of the details earlier, a lot of people will remember this incident.
Well, I mean, today really, is the shocking culmination of a really brutal attack against a defenceless 80-year-old man that involved a teenage boy punching and kicking him, inflicting fatal injuries, while a teenage girl laughed and watched on as this all unfolded. And today they've been convicted of the manslaughter of 80-year-old Bim Coley. And just to go through what actually happened and how these events actually unfolded, Mr. Coley took his dog Rocky out for a walk in a place called Franklin Park on the 1st of September last year. And this was a place really that is only a few yards away from his actual home. And we've got some images there of him taking Rocky, the little dog that we can see down there, for the beginning of this walk. And during this attack, he sustained such serious injuries that he broke his neck as well as broke 3 ribs, and he very sadly died in hospital the next day from a spinal cord injury. But in terms of what we heard during the trial, the court heard how this was an intense attack. The boy subjected him to racial abuse before pushing him onto the ground and slapping him around the face with a slider. It's kind of like a flip-flop type shoe. The girl filmed this whole attack, laughed and encouraged the violence. And it'd be great to have a bit more of a look at some of that CCTV because it shows a little bit of the events unfolding. So here we have those 2 defendants running away from the park. You can see them running at, speed away from the scene of the crime. This actually shows the teenage boy walking out of a place called Camden Road and turning onto Braunstone Close. And this is a road that's just adjacent to the park. And we saw those images earlier of Mr. Coley leaving the house with his dog. And I think it's worth hearing, you mentioned their reaction, worth hearing from his daughter, Susan Coley, who gave her reaction to the verdict today. Let's have a listen.
Our home feels so empty without him and will never be the same. Every time my mum opens the front door, she thinks about what happened to her husband. listening to the enormity of what happened, what Dad was subjected to, will never leave us. We feel angry and disgust towards the teenagers who took Dad away from us. They humiliated him. An 80-year-old man assaulted him, filmed it and laughed at him. Dad did not deserve this, and we wouldn't wish this on anyone else.
I mean, you can imagine the pain that, as a family, they are going through, and the decision to find them both guilty of manslaughter was a unanimous decision by the jury. They reached it in just under 7 hours. And the boy in this case had initially been charged with murder and manslaughter, but they found him not guilty of the murder charge. He's been remanded into custody and the girl has been allowed bail. But the judge actually said to this girl, who of course neither of which we can name due to their age, I want to make it absolutely crystal clear the fact bail is being granted should not be taken as any indication as to the sentence when the time comes, i.e. you're not going to get anything shorter because you're on bail. So they're going to be sentenced next month.
OK, Amelia, thank you. Disturbing case there, thank you. Still to come here on the programme, we'll have the details as Prince Harry goes back to court in a bid to appeal a decision to downgrade his level of security here in the UK. As Harry headed to court, the King and Queen headed to Rome as part of a 4-day state visit. We'll have the latest from the Italian capital. And a Birmingham resident makes a very visual point during a council meeting over the ongoing bin strikes in the city. Prince Harry has been appearing at the Court of Appeal today in a bid to overturn a ruling on his UK security arrangements. The Duke of Sussex taxpayer-funded protection was changed in 2020. This is when he stopped being a working royal. His legal team argues he was singled out for inferior treatment. Sky's royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
He's no stranger to the British courts, but this a rare personal appearance as Prince Harry shows up for the latest legal showdown over his security.
Morning, Harry. Are you going to visit your dad, Harry?
Plenty of questions, but he's here for answers about the way police protection was withdrawn when he left his royal role. Inside court, the Duke's team argued proper process wasn't followed.
He has been singled out for different, unjustified and inferior treatment.
The Home Office strongly disagrees, but Harry's team say since he and Meghan stepped down, the decision to grant a bespoke security arrangement wasn't fair.
The appellant's case is that he should be considered under the terms of reference and subject to the same process as any other individual being considered for protective security.
Experts say sorting security for high-profile people is always complex.
Each risk assessment analysis has to be current. You have to look at the current threat, the current risk to that individual, the timeliness of it, the potential of any risks or threats, and balance it accordingly with the protections put in place.
It comes as Prince Harry's Centre Bali charity is caught up in a catastrophic boardroom breakdown. Back in California, Meghan's launching her latest venture, a podcast, which reveals her medical scare after giving birth.
And we both had preeclampsia, postpartum
God, can you
preeclampsia.
believe we both had that? It's so rare.
It's so rare.
And so scary.
And so scary. And you go, and you're still trying to juggle all of these things, and the world doesn't know what's happening.
The Duke's case clashed with Meghan's podcast, but he didn't want to miss this moment. The fact Prince Harry was here in person shows how much this means to him. He wants to come home more often and bring his family with him. As he sat in court, he listened intently, making occasional notes. Harry's two-day hearing will be decided by 3 appeal court judges. He won't be here for their ruling, due to be published at a later date. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Central London.
Meanwhile, the King and Queen received a red carpet welcome in Rome as part of their 4-day state visit to Italy. The royal couple spent the day touring the Colosseum and watched a flypast over the capital from the Red Arrows and their Italian Air Force counterparts. Their trip comes as part of UK efforts to reinforce ties with its European allies, as Rhiannon Mills reports.
If you want to make sure your visit has impact, this will probably do it. The closeness of the UK and Italy spectacularly on display over Rome. As the King and Queen met President Mattarella and his daughter Laura to formally begin their royal tour. But on their coattails, a significant political delegation. Foreign Secretary David Lammy tucked away in the left-hand corner there, laughing with the UK's ambassador. This is what resetting our relationships with our European partners looks like. Even if the King wasn't entirely happy with how his photo op was going. We don't get to see the important diplomatic talks. We do see the symbolism. A nod to our shared history at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and in the current climate, an acknowledgement of our important defence ties. There's been nothing understated on this tour so far to try and guarantee it gets coverage. The crowds getting a show they hadn't expected at the Colosseum, as the King and Queen then posed for a pre-20th wedding anniversary photo opportunity, even though back home there were unexpected pictures appearing of another member of the family. Neither of them are strangers to family and private matters getting in the way of their public duties. No doubt Harry being in London is a distraction, but it certainly will not stand in the way of them doing everything they possibly can to still keep their hosts happy. With everything else going on in the world at the moment, it's easy to wonder why this really matters. Yet to quote the UK's ambassador, he is convinced those handshakes will deliver an intangible yet priceless legacy. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Rome.
To Birmingham now, and a story that we've been covering for the last few weeks here on the UK Tonight, the ongoing bin strikes that have caused rubbish to pile up right across the city. Talks between union leaders and councillors ended without an agreement again today, as hundreds of striking workers gathered in the centre of the city with their walkout entering its 5th week. The Health Secretary says he's now concerned about the public health situation for residents. Our national correspondent Tom Parminter has this next report.
This is what it's come to, a daily dose of disinfectant. Because the biggest rubbish pile on James's Street is right on his doorstep.
Feels like you're doing something.
It's doing something, yeah.
Yeah. He's using litres of this stuff to keep the stench at bay.
You get depressed sometimes looking ahead like.
The thing that hurts him most is that they're holding his grandmother's funeral next week. The hearse won't be able to get to their house.
She was a lovely woman. She liked it here, and I'd like, to get her down here. That's it. Yeah. Mean an awful lot to me, yeah. So I'd like to bring her back here and start the funeral from here.
But it's just not possible.
It's not going to be possible.
His neighbour Javid is registered blind and has already hurt himself simply leaving the house.
I tripped over here a couple of times and fell.
Over the rubbish?
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel terrible, to be honest. Because, I'm from Asian country, yeah. In the third world country, we don't have this. What we got here, yeah. This is beyond third world country.
Some rubbish is being picked up by agency workers, but the union and the city council still haven't reached a full settlement.
I understand how difficult this is for the people of the city. This is why we're very keen to get a resolution to the dispute, and also why we're taking the contingency measures that we are as well.
Inside the council's meeting, a man dressed as a rat turned up to make his point.
What date does the council think it will have reduced the backlog, reduced the rat population, and returned our streets to an acceptable state?
Are we going to win? Are we going to win?
While outside, the striking workers and their union say they cannot back down.
This isn't about a pay rise. This is about a pay cut of a quarter of their pay. That blame sits at the door of the council. But look, I think there's a resolution to be had. We put that resolution forward. I really would like the council to pick that up.
Until they reach an agreement, people are stuck living with this embarrassing mess. And now the Health Secretary has said he's concerned as to the effect it's having on the people living here amongst this rubbish. It's not the first bin strike in this city, but it is fast becoming one of the worst, with residents desperate for an end to this squalor. Tom Parminter, Sky News, Birmingham.
I'll continue to follow that story here on the UK Tonight. Now, let's head to Washington. Sky's David Blevins joins us from there, because we are expecting to see the US president at some point this evening signing more of those executive orders, and he always comes armed with a lot more than that, doesn't he? He always has plenty to say. So what are you expecting from him this evening, David?
Hi, Sarah-Jane. Yes, he is running a little behind schedule. We understand he is going to sign an executive order designating coal a mineral, even though it's not a mineral. This is an attempt to lift barriers to coal mining in the United States so that coal may be used as an alternative source of energy as part of his plan to bring back manufacturing in the United States, very much sitting within that agenda of returning to a bygone era for the United States. But his agenda today has, of course, been dominated again by the issue of tariffs, most notably the fact that China did not buckle when he said he was going to double the tariffs on China if they did not ease up their plan to impose a reciprocal tariff of 34% on the United States. So his press secretary, Caroline Levitt, has now confirmed that as and from midnight tonight. That's 5 a.m. tomorrow in the UK. He is indeed going to impose a tariff of 104% on goods coming into the United States from China. Now, that is a pretty staggering escalation in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. But Caroline Levitt, in the press briefing this afternoon, continued to defend the tariff policy. She said countries were queuing up, falling over themselves, I think was the term she used, and talked about the phone ringing off the hook. She said almost 70 countries had been in touch seeking to negotiate with the president in terms of tariffs. So they're still defending it as the way forward and saying it was a mistake of China to hit back.
David, while we wait for the president, if it's worth chewing over a bit of division in the ranks today, some friction between Elon Musk and government officials, some insults flying. Perhaps you could bring us the details.
Yes, it's the issue, I think, that is dominating the news channels here in the United States today, because it's probably the first real sign of division in the inner circle around Donald Trump between two of his aides, Elon Musk, the man we've heard so much about since the election, and Peter Navarro, not so well known perhaps, but he is the president's economic advisor. Now, last night, Peter Navarro suggested that Elon Musk was actually an assembler of cars in the United States rather than a manufacturer of cars. In response to that, Elon Musk posted online this morning that Peter Navarro was a moron. And in fact, Musk has doubled down on that this evening. When asked about the tension, the president's press secretary today said, boys will be boys. She conceded that they were very different in terms of their views around tariffs and trade. But she went on to say that we should be very grateful as journalists that they have the most transparent administration in history. In other words, we should be quite grateful that they're airing their dirty linen in public. And she says it also shows a willingness on the part of the president to hear various views. But certainly it is a sign that there is tension among those who are close to the president right now.
Boys will be boys and coal will be a mineral, even when it's not. An interesting evening ahead for you in Washington, David. Look forward to your analysis later on. That's David Blevins there for us, head of President Trump, appearing on our screens later with that executive order. Still to come here on the UK tonight, Arsenal are taking on the European champions Real Madrid right now. We'll bring you the updates. Plus, we'll look ahead to the first golf major of the year. The big question, can Rory McIlroy finally win the Masters?
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. We are on standby for President Trump to appear in Washington, signing an executive order. As soon as we get those pictures in, we'll bring them to you here on Sky News. But first, David is here with a look at the sport. Hello.
Hello.
The Masters starts in 2 days' time, and all the chat is about Rory McIlroy. Can he finally end his major drought? There he is. What's the mood like? What's the chatter ahead of the start of the tournament?
Yeah, it's been just over 10 years since Rory McIlroy won his last major. That was in 2014, the PGA Championship. And he's come close a couple of times since then. He was third at the Open a couple of years ago, and he's had 2 successive second-place finishes at the US Open. But look, the one he really wants is the Masters at Augusta. If he does win the elusive green jacket, probably late on Sunday night, if he does get to that point, then he'll become just the 6th player ever to win the career Grand Slam. That's the players that have won all 4 of the major championships that are available. The issue that he's got and the issue that he's had down the years is a little bit of weight of history. People might remember back in 2011, he was just 21 years old, real baby face, although he's still got a bit of a baby face now. He was 21 years old and he had a 4-shot lead going down the back 9 at Augusta. Everyone was expecting him to nail it and win the green jacket, and he blew it. And he shot 7 over on the final 9 holes, which ended any hope that he had of winning the Masters on that occasion. And since winning his last major in 2014, really everything is focused on this career Grand Slam. Every time he drives down the iconic Magnolia Lane at Augusta National, he's thinking, is this my year? Every time he does a media...
is it his year?
Yeah, every time he does a media interview, the narrative is this going to be your year? Every time he swings the club, the patrons at Augusta are thinking, is this going to be your year? He's been talking to the media today, and I think from his point of view, he's just kind of trying to say, look, I'm just going to focus on what I can control. This is what he said today.
It's just narratives, it's noise, and it's just trying to block out that noise as much as possible. I need to treat this tournament like, you know, all the other tournaments that I play throughout the year. And yeah, look, I understand the narrative and the noise, and you know, there's a lot of anticipation and build up and coming into this tournament each and every year. But I just have to keep my head down and focus on my job.
Yeah, it's all just noise, isn't it? Yeah. He must get sick of those questions, but he has to answer them.
And he's in great form at the moment. Yeah. He's won twice already this year. He's won at Pebble Beach as well, and he won the Players' Championship, which is one of the big tournaments outside of the 4 major championships. He's in great form. He's had a bit of an elbow issue with an injury, but he says that's all clear now. He has been trying to relax in the build-up to the tournament. Yeah. He said he's been watching Bridgerton. And he said he's...
I don't know if you've seen Bridgerton. It's not exactly relaxing. Oh, my word. I don't know if that put you in the mood for the Masters. Each their own.
Yeah, and he's also been reading the John Grisham novel, The Reckoning, and it could be, you know, his reckoning on Sunday night. So he has been trying to relax a little bit. OK. Well,
as we know, you know, his form's good, but it's the mental game in golf, isn't it? What's that quote? You know, the most important distance in golf is the 5 inches between the ears. And who else is in contention? Because it's not just the Rory McIlroy show, is it? No, you have to keep your eye on Scotty Scheffler, already a 2-time winner of the Masters, the world #1. He is going to be one of the major threats this week to Rory McIlroy, probably as well Colin Morikawa, another American. The pairings have been pulled out as well for this week, and Rory, when he's done well at the Masters, has had an early tee time on the opening day. He's got a bit of a later start on the opening couple of days. So he's got the whole day to kind of think through and have a look at how the course is playing. I don't know whether that might play into his advantage or be a bit of a disadvantage, but you have to look at Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa. A host of players could win this. It's one of the most iconic golf courses in the world, you have to say. So it should be an exciting week ahead. And a quick one about the weather because it was disrupted last year. What's the forecast?
Yeah, it looks good for the moment.
Yeah.
There was obviously a hurricane there last year in September time.
Be unlucky to get that again.
Absolutely, absolutely. But everything's been repaired and fixed ahead of that. So we'll look forward to that this week. Right now, though, we have some Champions League action going on.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Hello, my name is Matthew Atpan. This is my home. You want to come inside? I've got 2 Guinness World Records, but I've broken 3. The first one I did was dressing up as John Cena. I had to run the full marathon dressed in that costume, which is what gave me the world record of running the fastest marathon dressed as a professional wrestler. I was able to do that again for the half marathon. So the first one was at York, and then the second one was at Leeds half marathon in 2021 and 2022 respectively. We were all in COVID times when we all lost people. In particular, in my situation, I lost my grandma, and my dad unfortunately passed away from kidney failure in January 2021. And as a tribute to him and to everyone sort of like who had lost something, I wanted to sort of like do something to commemorate him. And that started by me choosing the Guinness World.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Right, let's have a quick look at the weather before we go.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mainly fine conditions continuing for now, but the weekend is going to bring some changes. Most places fine this evening. The far north of Scotland, quite dull. Eastern Britain will see low clouds spreading in overnight, but elsewhere it's going to remain clear, apart from a few fog patches.